Wouldn't you rather play as a new dragon species in your 5e or Pathfinder game? Well, now you can. Roll for Combat, the creators of the incredibly popular Battlezoo Ancestries dragons, have done it again with Battlezoo Secret Dragons. This collection of 4 dragon books introduces new families of dragons to the world of 5e and Pathfinder. Now you can play as, or fight, the dragon you never knew you needed. Inside each book, players will find complete rules for playing as one of these new unique dragons, allowing them to unleash new abilities and powers never seen before. Meanwhile, GMs will find pages of monster stats, allowing you to pit these new creatures against your players. Each book features one new family of dragons filled with extensive, in-depth descriptions of their powers and abilities, background and history information, world lore, illustrations, and more to help you introduce these new dragons into your 5e or Pathfinder games. Experience the world of Battlezoo Secret Dragons through 4 new books. Fairy dragons are connected with the Fey realm and love to play pranks and cause mischief. That is, when they aren't conspiring with the courts of the Fae. Misfit dragons are hot, magical messes of magical energy, constantly shifting their physical forms, phasing in and out of existence, or simply releasing random wild magic effects. They're quite a handful. Leshy dragons are deeply connected to nature, allowing them to grow alongside different types of plants, fungi, and leshies. Oh yeah, and they're master chefs as well. And finally, the powerful battle dragons are obsessed with the thrill of combat. Battle dragons love hunting foes, dueling opponents, or commanding their legions to glorious victory. Head over to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com now to secure your copies of Battlezoo Secret Dragons and become the dragon you were always meant to be.
Look at that. Look at that. We started right on time.
Perfect.
Is that amazing?
Real professionals. We're real pros.
We are pros. We're getting really good at this after 10,000 years and 500 videos.
Well, I have streamed quite a bit. Actually, we're about to have our 200th official live stream.
Oh, really?
Yeah, tonight's 199.
No, I don't even know how many I have. I can't even keep track. It's so many. Plus podcasts. I know for podcasts I have over 550 podcasts. So that's a lot.
Right. Which reminds me, if at some point I seem a little distracted, it's only because I'm making the thumbnail for my stream tonight.
Oh, well.
Mark in chat says, Derik, make a good thumbnail.
Make a good thumbnail. So the main purpose of this stream is to remind you to back Secret Dragons because it ends in 6 days. And if you want those really, really cool special edition covers, you're only going to get them if you back the special. That's it. You got to go to kickstarter.rollforcombat.com. You won't get them anywhere else because I'm only going to print as many as we need, and that's it. So, and also there's discounts. Like, actually, the discounts are huge. It's like they're kind of hidden in the corner. I probably should have done a chart, but if you do it now, and if you get all 4 books, which is the most popular, here we go. All 4 hardcovers so right now it's $139 for 4 hardcovers. After this, it's like $250. So you probably want to get it now. There's some pretty big savings, and that includes the PDFs too, and the digital assets. So I give as much as I can. So
I mean, you're doing the Lord's work.
Oh, I mean, and we just finished So we just did the Year of Monsters classic creature book. That's actually done, more or less. Mark's finished up the 5e version. I've finished up the Pathfinder version. We just got to proof it, and that's coming out like in a week, maybe 2. Like it's done. That's big too. It's gonna have about 220 pages for the Pathfinder, and I think 250 pages for the 5e, because 5e, we're the only people on planet Earth who's makes their 5e content bigger than their bigger? Pathfinder.
How does that even work?
because we're awesome, man. No, because we add all those rollable tables for the traits, and we put them in for the species. And those take up a lot of room. So we add all those, and we don't add it we don't do it for all the subspecies. We do it for only some species. So what most people do for 5e, they just put in like a page, but we put in, I'm opening it up just to look at it to give you an example. By the way, we guessed that they would be calling it species, and that's what we've been calling them in the 5e for the last year and a half. And we were right, because they just came out with a video yesterday and they confirmed that it's going to species from race. So we
What do you like better? Do you like
correctly.
you like species, or do you like ancestry?
I like ancestry better, but the problem is like they only had race, species, which Starfinder uses, ancestry, with Pathfinder pretty much took. So I think there was like one more, and that's it. Like they there's not a lot of terms for this, so they kind of came a little too late. So they figured, now because Starfinder is becoming Pathfinder, I guess species will still stay species, but I think in Starfinder it might be changing to ancestries, because they're becoming. It's weird because Starfinder's using the Pathfinder Second Edition rules. So what does the terminology move over? Well, things like that.
I agree with John says species is technically more accurate, but it sounds weird, and I agree. Species to me inherently feels kind of sci-fi-y, and and of course I or like sciencey. And then Nathan that says species is a loaded term that implies non-breeding between groups, and that is kind of a distinctive thing between species. I suppose that is true. Well, and presumably some of these species can interbreed, but the other problem is, like I said, I mean, I outside of D&D, some of my favorite works of fantasy, like Lord of the Rings, right? What does Elrond say? We must look to the race of men, right? Like that's just part of. There's a lot of obviously baggage with that term, but there's also a lot of legacy to it. That term too.
Culture. Well, it's fat. I don't know. It gets weird because I don't even want to get into that gender politics crap. Because it's like we're all the same. It's like, does race exist? Not really, because we're all the same. We're all humans, and we're all Homo sapiens. So no, it doesn't. It's really culture. So really, it should almost be culture. But in this case, it actually is race, because they're different. They're not humans. They're humanoids. Like, so it gets weird.
I think Pathfinder 2 honestly did the best of it with ancestry and heritage. That makes
that was
a ton of sense.
They took the best one, and now D&D is like, damn it.
That's true. Paizo just snaked it from them before they could get to it, and now they have it. So they have to come up with something a lot more awkward. But
So anyhow, back to the original question, because for some of them with the backgrounds, we put in backgrounds for our species, and they have things like personality traits, which is a D8, ideal, which is a D6, bond, which is D6, and flaw, which is a D6. And those add, it's that fun role-playing thing, and those are in all the D&D books. So here's what's fascinating, is that we were thinking of putting those same tables in Pathfinder, because Mark really likes those tables, and he thinks, might as well. It's actually an alternate rule in Pathfinder, and we put a poll asking people, hey, would you like it if we put these tables in, these personality tables, they're called suggested characteristic tables, where you can like roll tables and find out stuff about your characters. And the voting was overwhelmingly no. People did not want those tables in Pathfinder, so we did not include them, because we were going to, and I'm like, damn, no one wants this stuff.
Well, and I think there's a reason for that. There's obviously a lot of divisions between gamers and stuff, but in my experience, there is a type of gamer who is probably, this is a broad generalization, but tends to be more attracted to a game like Pathfinder 2 because
it's not D&D.
No, because it's very deterministic.
Oh,
you customize every element of your character, right? You pick this, you pick that, you pick this. You can mix and match the heritage. You can take what feats. You can build this exact right. We call it path builder, right? This idea of like, just I have this vision of my character. And so for that type of player, the idea of this sort of randomness is very anathema, right? They are playing the game because they have this vision of a character and they want to execute on that vision. Whereas other players, as players like me, I don't care what I play. In fact, I would rather randomly generate my character every single time if I could. In fact, one of my biggest complaints about Pathfinder Second Edition is there's really not really a good way to randomize things. It's tough to do. I love, not just random attribute generation, but like what class I'm going to be and what, like for me, that's part of the fun is I play to sort of not to find the character that I've already built, but to discover the character that I'm going to play. So I think that's where the shift is.
Are we going on an adventure? We're going on an adventure, and part of the adventure is to find out what I'm going to be doing. I mean,
a table like that would probably be very popular in, say, OSE or Shadow Dark or whatever. But in Pathfinder Second Edition, I don't know.
So, you and I are going to Origins in less than 2 months.
Yes, less than 2 months, like 7 weeks. Wow.
7 weeks. So Kelsey Dion's going to be there, and I invited her into our posse. Is that okay to have
I don't really have a posse.
Oh, dude. I had pictures.
I am actively trying to control the posse this year, okay?
Well, okay, let me rephrase it then. I have a posse, and you're part of mine.
You can have as big of a posse as you want, and I will show up as needed. But
you're the one who we went to that German. I want to go back to that German place. That place was good.
Oh, the Half-Bra House.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm obviously we have a lot of patrons coming in, and we're going to totally hang out and have a good time. But last year, I bent over backwards to try to run games for almost everyone that I could, and pretty much was running myself ragged over the course of the weekend.
I'm not talking about actually running games. I'm talking about just hanging out and having a group.
Yeah. I just basically want to be able to play. I want to be able to play more games. Actually, be a participant, a visitor to the con as well. So
maybe I'll run something.
I mean, hey, listen, tit for tat. Although you did say I have to run something for you. I don't remember what you were telling me I have to run for you.
Don't remember either. What was that?
It was some game. Might have been. Maybe it was it Blades in the Dark or was it Fabula Ultima?
No, Fabula
it was
Ultima. Yes.
Fabula Ultima.
Your favorite game of all time.
It's not my favorite game of all time.
Your favorite game of all time.
It's probably my favorite game from last year, though.
Well, here's the thing. Kelsey Dion is having a special actual play of Shadow Dark in front of an audience, and I will be one of the players. So that will be fun. Are you going to come watch me play and destroy Kelsey's Shadow Dark game? Or see Kelsey kill my character off?
I'm not opposed to it, but that is pretty funny. But I took a look. My buddy Aaron has a copy. He kickstarted Shadow Dark. He's got a copy of the hardcover, and I took a look at it.
It was so much fun. I played it the other day. It was.
I don't understand this. It looks like 5th edition.
Here's the thing. I'm completely on the same board as you. I looked at it and I was like, it looks exactly like every other one of these. I'm like, I've seen them. They all look the same. And then I played it. And I don't know, man. There's some secret sauce in there because it was just freaking fun. I was just like, I can't describe it. It was... it did feel like D&D. It really did, like 1st edition, but it felt very clean and modern.
Well, yeah, that's because, even though people endlessly shit on it, I mean, the 5th edition mechanics are very simple and elegant and effective.
Yes.
They just work. I mean, they work really well. And I know people like to harp on it endlessly, but the fact of the matter is advantage and disadvantage is a very simple, easy, intuitive mechanic. It just works. It feels good when you roll with advantage. It feels bad when you roll with disadvantage. It's easy for players to understand. It doesn't really add that much, overload to the math. The numbers are very modest in 5th edition. And so it's a good core ecosystem. I mean, I wouldn't call it Shadow Dark, but when we played our last fantasy campaign, I ran the group through Keep on the Borderlands, which Goodman Games had quote unquote done for 5th edition. Yeah. And I threw out like 90% of the rules of 5th edition. I basically just kept the core, right? 6 stats, you add a bonus sometimes, advantage, disadvantage, and then threw in a couple of extra things on top of that. And everyone had a great time with it because you're just like, who cares about the rules, right? The rules are whatever. And while a lot of people view that as a big negative for a game like 5th edition, For me, it's a big positive. You know, when a game is well designed, I want to respect it. When a game is kind of like, yeah, we don't really care, these rules are kind of here and yeah, don't really matter, then I don't feel bad to just kind of throw them out willy-nilly and do whatever I want to do. So anyways, Shadow Dark is very, very, very rules light. But
well, here's the thing. Maybe you'll get Kelsey. Maybe we can convince Kelsey to run a game. How awesome would that be? Get to play a game with the person who freaking wrote the game.
Well, I've done that before.
As I said, how cool will it be for you to do it again? Yes, I've done it.
I mean, that would be amazing. Obviously, I'm you know.
Actually, now
that being said.
Okay, wait.
I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but just because you made an RPG doesn't necessarily mean that you're a great game master.
That's true. Supposedly, she's an excellent game master.
I'm sure she is. I'm just saying that we should not conflate the two and assume that they are the same.
Did Stephen become his insane self and try to break the game and drive everyone at the table insane? Yes. So this is what happened. I was at a convention and we were playing Shadow Dark. And actually the DM recognized me, which was funny, and so we were talking. This was his first time ever DMing at a convention, and he was pretty new to it. And there was 3 other people at the table. 2 of them never went to a convention before, and one of them never played really role-playing games before. So that's
an all-star group.
Oh, it was, because you know what happened? Here's my favorite part. I played my insane self, which is like, oh, there's a dark room, and you can smell and hear things clicking in there. I'm like, okay, I walk in. I'm like, do. I'm like, we're going right in there, not checking for traps, nothing. Here's the famous one of like, there's a large statue holding a gigantic sword, looking down at you, and there's a bowl filled with magic items. What do you do? And of course, and there's a locked door behind it. So it's like, of course you put a magic item in there, and then it probably unlocks the door and you go through. I'm like, I take them all. And it's like, roll initiative, the statue comes alive, stabs you for 6 points of damage, you're half dead. I'm like, yay, here we go. But because I played like this, the other people who were new to the hobby thought that's how you're supposed to play. So they're splitting the group. They're going crazy. And I'm sitting there going, oh no, you're not supposed to do this. I'm like, oh, well, then they split the group. And then this poor girl, who's just like her first time ever playing, a statue grabbed her and was crushing her to death. And we're fighting something else. And we're all like, I'm like, oh man. And then we're like, had to go run, save her. Oh, it was awesome. Chaos, man. It was total chaos, that game.
It sounds pretty awesome.
It actually was. I ended up living too. I ended up getting to level 2, and Kelsey told me to bring that character. So we'll see.
I mean, it's official now, right?
Yeah. But that's the funny thing is that, like, here's another thing that happened is that, so we were one of the first Starfinder podcasts, actual place ever. And Bob Marquis was probably one of the best players. He's actually going to be in Ohio. I don't know if he's going to go. He doesn't really go to conventions, but he's a very good role player. And he played...
What does that mean, very good role player, to you?
He is very dedicated to his character, and really, you'd love him. Like, for example, when we played one version of Starfinder... Sorry, when we played a version of Pathfinder, he asked me, and we played the science fiction one. Was it Severin? I forgot what the science fiction one in Pathfinder, the actual, not the actual play, the adventure path. And so he got found in a pod, and he was completely bald, and then the 2 people who found him, which were 2 of the other players, he kept calling them fathers. And he'd be like, fathers, and he was totally playing this innocent child, like, fathers, is this what I'm supposed to do? Fathers, how do I use this sword? And he did it for 3 years. I mean, he was so dedicated. That's what I mean. I'm like, wow, he's really going there. And then as he would level up, depending on what his fathers, which were two of the other characters, taught him, he would level up his character based on their teachings, not on what he wanted to do for his character. So by the time we got to like level 12, his character was very strange anomaly. It was sort of this weird mixture of these two characters based on their teachings of him. So that's dedication, okay, to like change your character. Actually, up to like level 15 or something. It's like he changed his character based and leveled up his character based on what other people told him to do. So, anyhow.
I mean, I respect. I mean, listen. I will
role playing.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say, if you like, if I was playing a D&D character and I was a fighter or something like that, and I didn't even have a good good intelligence,
by the way. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying like, and then like something happened in the game where it was like, hey, you know, you were saved, your life was saved by a wizard or something in the game, not some backstory shit, like the actual game.
Mm-hmm.
I would be like, you know what? I'm going to put away the sword and I'm going to dedicate my life to studying magic as a way to repay this man who is now my mentor. And I would just start taking levels in wizard just because, like, again, I don't plan builds and I don't do any of that stuff. I just go with the flow.
No, he totally did that. He basically, he was a blank slate. He had very average stats, and then he just changed. And when he leveled up, he would put stats into he'd put points into whatever stats he wanted. So what ended up happening is that there was the operative in Starfighter, and when the operative came out, the operative was supposed to be like a super spy and really slick and sort of a I don't know. He was modeled maybe after James Bond, but when he played the operative, he modeled him after Rusty in Ocean's 11 and Brad Pitt's character, which is like very different, kind of a little sleazy and a little bit of a scumball and kind of a you know, like someone who was like always trying to steal stuff. He wasn't like a cool operative. He was more of a we're gonna go, you know, figure out how to break into this bank and steal all the money. And the funny thing is that so many people listen to the podcast, and I was talking to Pathfinder back when they actually had the con. They said, dude, I think Bob kind of changed the whole archetype of this character because everyone plays him like that now. And so either he was responsible for a lot of people changing the theme of the operative and listened to the podcast and said, oh, cool, I'm going to play the operative like Bob played it, or they misunderstood how they thought people would play the class. It's probably a little bit of both, but it is fascinating because it was written and expected to be played very differently, and it was not played that way at all. And they actually changed it throughout the life of Starfinder. So, anyhow.
Speaking of changing the game up, so we've had a week to ingest a world of. In fact, when she's stepping down, what, today or tomorrow? Tomorrow. So as of tomorrow, there will be no leadership. Wizards of the Coast. And what does this mean for the future of Magic the Gathering and Dungeons and Dragons? Well, the first thing, obviously, is that, you know, they did do their reports, and it was not the Armageddon that some people were expecting.
Yes and no. I'll tell you why. Because we did a full analysis yesterday. I've read them all. Because it's not full Armageddon, but their entire company is being held up by Monopoly Go, Baldur's Gate 3, and a little bit of Peppa Pig. Actually, Peppa Pig, the digital Peppa Pig, actually helped them out a lot, and Magic, and that's it. They're.
I mean, it's the Pareto principle, right? I mean, 20% of your products probably account for 80% of your sales. You know.
Yeah, but the problem is that the ones so their physical products were down like 27%.
Right, so
Christmas.
You could look at it.
That's
right.
Yeah, but that's insane. Like even like the news people, like all the Financial Times were like, "Oh, that is not like you're down like 5%. That's bad. You're down 10%. That's a bloodbath. You're down 25, 27%, and they were down last year." They're like, "Yeah, that's crash. That's a crash. Right. Like consumer products are dead. Like that's
well,
just
one thing I think people really. I mean, I understand it was a very trying time. God knows. I lost my business. You know, everyone got really used to what the pandemic was like and like what it was like after the pandemic. And, people had more disposable income than they've ever had before, and they couldn't go anywhere. They couldn't do anything. And so, they were buying games up and spending money left and right.
Yeah.
And so, of course it's going to go down. I mean,
well, it's not that
inflation is huge and people have less disposable income. Also, by the way, right, in my opinion, the longer a life cycle of an edition is going on, of course sales are going to go down because more and more people either came and went, or they say, you know what, I have enough books and stuff to last me a lifetime.
Wrong. I'm going to tell you why you're wrong.
Please.
So I worked for Harry Potter and Scholastic, and I worked with Blue's Clues, Disney Online, and I worked with Nickelodeon. So I've worked on a lot of kids products. And
that explains the maturity level. No,
that does explain the maturity level. So no, but I worked on a lot of kids products, and I learned a lot working for these companies. And one of the big things I learned is you always have new customers, because if your customer base, like when I was doing Nickelodeon and I was doing Blue's Clues, if your customer base is 3 to 5 year olds, well, guess what? There's always 3 to 5 year olds, and they all are new, and they're constantly coming in. So you always have a good customer base. That's the first thing. The second thing is that parents will spend any amount of money for their kids, especially if they think it's educational. So that's something else to keep in mind. So you're saying, these customers came and went, but a lot of these products were kid products made for kids, not adults. And for the last 50 years, they weren't coming and going. What ended up happening is that they would get new kids and the kids would buy the new products. And yes, the products would have to change, but they've been selling Mr. Potato Head for 50 years, 60 years? It's the same damn thing, and it's still being sold.
Yeah, but Mr. Potato Head is not the cultural force of reckoning that he once was.
But you know what? Everyone has one. Like my kids had them. Like, kids get the freaking Mr. Potato
You
Head.
Yourself said, and I quote,
yes.
Yeah, okay, kids have toys, but they don't really play with toys. They play with their iPads.
You're
and their
100%
phones. You said
right.
that. You said that this week.
And that's what's happening. It's like it's not the COVID factor that changed it. It's two factors. It's Toys R Us went out of business, which I can't emphasize how much that hurt them. Like, that overnight destroyed their sales because all their distribution channels were eliminated. Target, Walmart, Kmart, all those marts actually said publicly that they're reducing their toy sections. So there is literally nowhere to buy these physical toy products anymore except Amazon.
Yeah,
and when you don't have a place to buy products, you can't sell them, and that is becoming a real big problem. Not just for Hasbro, Mattel actually had. That's the thing. If you look at their numbers, Mattel and Hasbro, except for the Barbie bump, have very similar numbers because they're both. It's not like Mattel's doing fantastic and Barbie's doing terrible. No, they're both doing terrible because toys are just down. Period. End of story.
But at the same time, like, I'm not going to feel bad about like Dungeons and Dragons because, like, growing up, I'm sure you were very well aware of this as well. You were lucky if obviously they would have D&D in a very, like in the back of the weird train shop or in the back of the weird,
I bought my
store.
red box at Toys R Us.
All right, but I was going to say, okay, outside of a couple of like the flagship products like the beginner box set that you could see,
which I bought at Toys R Us.
At Toys R Us, or you could see it at like Walden Books.
Yes.
Now there was D&D nowhere else. Now you can, like, I swear to God, they sell the D&D starter set at like the corner gas station.
Oh, like, no, you're 100% right.
It's at Target. It's it's everywhere.
Oh yeah, you're right. But they don't sell. Well, it was a combination that Hasbro licensed mostly Disney properties and Star Wars, and none of those toys are selling. And it's a combination of like, no one's buying toys, and everything we licensed isn't selling. Nothing is selling. So it was that was just bad. It was just bad timing. Like,
I mean, if you're going to try to tell me that these corporations got greedy, they have no idea what their market segment wants. They are just throwing their IP on everything and hoping it sticks, and it's biting them in the ass. Yeah. Okay, good. Yay. Hooray. Like, I don't know. Like, I am so disillusioned with like the state and quality of most things that are made today. They're all just hyper derivative, and they're just, somebody somewhere thought that this was made a good focus group. And, the idea that people are creating these products because they genuinely think children are going to enjoy them, or that because they think a gamer is going to legitimately enjoy them, is a rare and precious commodity. And that I think by and large, with the exception of maybe, for example, Battlezoo products, is not, it's not true. There's too many corporate sees. Mark T says, I hate capitalism. No, capitalism's fine. I just, whatever we have, I don't know what we have.
Well, the problem is that
not great.
We have been able to squeeze every last ounce out of capitalism through algorithms. It used to be like, yeah, let's just do this. If it works, cool. If it doesn't, we'll try something else. And half the time they won't even know why things are doing well. They'd be like, when I started my career in advertising in like the 90s, I would meet with these huge brands and we talked to them, and they didn't even know half the time. Like, they had ideas like, oh, we know what segments we're popular with. It's like, do you know why? They're like, not really.
Well, so I'll use a metaphor here. It's a sports metaphor. Not that I'm a huge sports guy, but one of the more interesting data trends that has come out over the last 15 years is if you look at shots in the NBA, and I'm sure you're aware of this, but in basketball, there's the 3-point shot, and anything closer than that is 2 points. Well, the fact of the matter is, statistically, you're not that much more likely to make a shot from inside the rim as you are outside the rim, but the outside the rim ones were 3 points. And so people did the data analysis, and they basically started telling their players, either go for a layup or go for a 3-pointer.
Correct.
Don't shoot anything in between.
Yep.
That is quote unquote the best way to win a game of basketball.
100%.
Right?
Yep.
So they optimized for the best outcome.
I'll do one better.
Right. And wait.
Okay.
But let me just. Yeah. So they optimized for the best outcome. Yeah. Now, why did they want the best outcome? Because they wanted to win.
Yes.
But why did they want to win? Because if they win more, they can sell more tickets, they can sell more jerseys, they can make more money. Right. But here's the problem. A lot of people believe that has also made the game bad. That it has created a lot of problems with the game of basketball, that it is no longer as exciting of a game, because by solving for it and trying to win and trying to do the thing that you're supposed to be doing, you have also inadvertently done the opposite and now made the game more boring, even though your teams are theoretically winning more. It's a classic just optimization problem. And I think you see that in TTRPGs as well, where they somehow release books that are both exactly what everyone wants, but also exactly what no one buys.
Actually, I'm gonna look. I'm gonna touch on a subject that you hold dear. Is 4th edition.
I was gonna joke. I was like, if you're about to say 4th edition D&D,
4th edition, because 4th edition D&D was so well done that it was boring. It actually was done too well, and because it was done too well, it was boring, and no one. It kind of purposely needs misbalance. And one of the best talks I ever went to, maybe I told you the story, is Richard Garfield, right, the creator of Magic the Gathering, at GDC gave a story about the beginning of Magic and how no one was buying enough packs. They weren't printing enough packs. So when Legends came out, and he said stores by then, Legends, things were going insane, and Magic was just selling out crazy. So stores would order 30 packs, 30 boxes of Legends, and they'd get one.
And they'd get 2,
yeah, 2. And this kept happening. And then when Fallen Empires came out,
they printed to demand.
Well, not only did they print to demand, but they decided to make it. Everything was so well balanced, and it didn't have any of the bumps and the warts that any of the other decks had. They didn't have the Black Lotuses and the Moxes, and it didn't have any of that. There was a combination. It was a combo that they printed and then shipped as many as everyone ordered. And because it was so well balanced, it was terrible. No, it was the worst set. It was terrible. There's nothing in it that's useful, and it almost killed the freaking game. And then he said, and it was a very interesting talk, he's like, we learned that you need to have the highs and the lows and the quote broken cards, which really aren't broken because they have a formula, but they need broken. And if you don't have the highs and the lows, then you can't see where the mids are.
Well, if everything's special, no one is, right?
Exactly.
I mean, I'll go a step further, and I'll say that Luis Scott Vargas, who's one of the great Magic players, a Pro Tour Hall of Famer, he often says, people will talk about, they do a lot of reviews of Magic sets, and a lot of times people will say, I'm not enjoying this set, it doesn't seem very balanced, and he'll always say this. He'll say, don't confuse balance with fun, and in fact, oftentimes, in my experience, those two things are actually counterindicative, right? And that things that are overly balanced tend to not be as fun. And that is a legitimate concern that I have with some RPGs that are more they are more obsessed with not making anyone sad or mad than they are with maybe a couple people get left on the wayside, but man, a small handful of people are going to have a great time with this.
By the way, Jimmy, he says Fallen Empire changed the rarity. Completely wrong, Stephen. Well,
Fallen Empires didn't have rares.
Yeah. Well, that too, but it also had all the cards sucked. Again, I'm just telling you the talk that the person who created Magic said. So if you have an issue, bring it up with him. I have nothing to do with what he said.
Well, and I will do another one, and I'm going to say this. And obviously, it seems counter-purpose because it's coming from Magic the Gathering. Mark Rosewater, who is the lead designer at Magic the Gathering.
Well, it's a really good podcast, by the way. I don't know if he still does that. Does he still
Drive to Work podcast? Yes, he does.
Yeah, I stopped listening a while ago, but it's very good.
But he said, he was talking about like what you aim for, and he basically said this. He's like, if I were to do, if you were to ask me, or I tell my game designers, right, like what should you be aiming for? He says, should you be aiming for a set that if you were to poll 100 random people, okay, that 100 people would say 7. I give it a 7 out of 10. Mm-hmm. He goes, or would you rather get 50 people who said it's a 1 and 50 people who said it's a 10? Now, the average of 50 1s and 50 10s is 5.5. Right. The average of 100 people rating it a 7 is 7. So statistically, that is a higher aggregate average player score. But he said, but that is the absolute wrong way to design a game. He's like, if you are not designing a game that it's going to piss off some people and other people are going to love it like it's their child, he's like, you're doing it wrong.
Yep.
And I challenge you to show me where that design ethos is not part of a lot of this modern D&D design, where their goal is not to get a bunch of 10s and a handful of 1s. They want as many minimally satisfied customers as possible that will continue to keep buying. Yeah. And so it's driven by this, completely backwards point of view.
They give a very basic, safe, vanilla set of rules. And then if you want to get all the crazy stuff, you go and find it at Battlezoo or Hit Point Press or somewhere else. We will give you the crazy, but they just want to give you the safe space in a way.
Yes, there's something to be said about having a baseline. Yeah, but then you can't expect people to get super hyped about your next book.
I completely agree.
Right, they're going to go, like you said, they're going to go to a producer like RFC, or they're going to go over to Hit Point Press or whoever, Cobalt Press, because they're going to say, these people they're out there. They are creating the weird thing. Look, I get it's not for my cup of tea, but some of the ancestries that are in some of the Battlezoo products that have come out are just they could never be published.
They are. Someone I saw a review. Someone reviewed it, says it's like their stuff is batshit crazy.
Yeah, it
works.
Yeah, it's just and here's the and by the way, this
stuff is crazy.
This is one of the reasons why I can come on and I can support your company, but also at the same time say, and I'm going to pass.
Because that's fine. It's not your cup of tea, but
it's not my cup of tea.
Like one or two fine. Things, but you like Eldamon,
right? Exactly. That's my point. You're not making a product that is designed for every single person.
No,
right? You understand that if you're really into, I don't know, more dragons than you could shake a stick at, and you want to play them, okay, dragons, this book is for you. If you don't want to play as a dragon, then you're not going to pick up Battlezoo Ancestry's Dragon.
Right.
Right. It's just that's the black and white of it.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate that, because it means that you have a target audience that you're going for. D&D, it seems to me, they don't even know who their target audience is. They are just
the problem is that
they're putting books out there that they hope people won't get offended by, and that they'll buy it.
Yeah, I know. But what happened
and when I say offended, I don't necessarily mean like, from like a woke or racist perspective. I just mean like offended as in like, this book is totally garbage. I don't like it. It's not for me. They just want you to be like, yeah, the book seems okay. I'll pick it up.
Well, the thing is that D&D started off 5th edition as we have a very small group internally, and we are outsourcing all of our products to Cobalt Press. I mean, that's literally how D&D started. And they're like, we're just keeping it around because who knows? It's one of those, who knows? Maybe it'll turn into something. We're not going to sell the IP, but we can't let it die. So we'll just do it. But we're going to use the bare minimum to keep the lights on.
Life support. People do not understand the size of the D&D development team at the end of 3rd edition, and certainly throughout 4th edition was massive. And these, by the way, were not independent contractors. These people were hired full-time employees. The 2 different design teams that worked on 4th edition, each one had like over 10 people. There was the Orcus and Flywheel or something like that. And these were huge teams. By the time we got to 5th edition, I mean, you were talking about a skeleton crew.
Yep. It was there was no one on the team, like no one.
It was a life support.
Yeah. It was a life support because it was this incredibly small skeleton team, and everything was outsourced. I mean, they weren't even doing it in house.
right. And I'm not gonna like go too down this rabbit hole, because again, Derik likes to hate on everybody, but that's not necessarily true. But there is a reason that, again, I think that the consistency of the product, say from Roll for Combat, has tended to be very high. And one of the reasons is because you all have very, very tight, what I'll say is controls in place. You have you and Mark, right? And you guys are regularly communicating. You guys are talking to each other every single day. You're sharing the workload. You're each in each other's files. You both know what's going on. In this modern era where you outsource pages 1, 7, 25, 26, 27 to this author, and then pages 2, 4, 5, 96, and 77 go to this author. And none of them are even, maybe know who each other are. They're all just sending things to an anonymous, editor who is in theory putting them together, but they themselves might be an independent contractor, and then they just spit out a book, and it feels disjointed, and it feels confusing, and it feels underwhelming, and it feels like it was written by a bunch of different people. And it turns out it was. And maybe not the best way to do it. And so,
by the way, all of our new books are written by other people. Just FYI. But we do edit. You know what? We do edit it, and Mark and I very quickly, like within. It's funny because we have a new editor, we have a new writer, and they sent something in this was just last week, and I was like, "Is it ready?" Mark's like, "Yeah," and I read it, and I said, "This is excellent. It just needs to be grounded a little bit." And he said, that is literally exactly what I said. Like, he and I just also have the same, like, he and I had the exact same comments separately. So we also had the same vision, too.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. If you're going to use external authors, then you have to be prepared to do that kind of due diligence.
Oh, yeah.
And you have to be prepared to be on top of it, because you need to maintain that. So for me,
unfortunately, I've had to rewrite. Sometimes it's like very easy. We just take it and we change a few things. And unfortunately, I had one person I thought would be good, and I had to rewrite a lot of their work. I like personally sit there and rewrite it, and it sucked. So,
but like, I mean, and that can happen.
Yeah.
But going back to 5th edition, again, to me, 5th edition D&D, the ship had sailed. They were running on fumes. They said, you know what, we're going to make this edition of the game. It's kind of, in my opinion, 5th edition D&D is a love letter to 80s, 90s D&D, but with some 4th edition mechanics thrown in there to make the game a little bit smoother. And they were just like, you know what? This version of the game is not this hyper. It's not a Rube Goldberg machine. It's a very simple tool. But it could get you back to that game. And think about when 5th edition first came out, like the very first adventures that were produced for it were very old school in a way. They were dungeon based and dragons and now look where 5th edition is in terms of what the audience, at least what the audience says they want, and the kind of adventures that you get. And that's why I look back at 5th edition and I go, this game was never designed for these kind of adventures and these kinds of stories. It is fundamentally, in my mind, incompatible.
No. Well,
I have used 5th edition D&D to run classic old school kind of dungeon crawling campaigns. I mean, Kelsey's success with Shadow Dark is proof that you could basically take the 5th edition engine, file off some of the serial numbers and the feats, replace them with a couple random tables, and you get yourself $1 million Kickstarter.
Yeah, but the thing is, so many people are exposed so what ends up happening is Stranger Things and Critical Role and now even Baldur's Gate 3. This keeps happening to D&D. It's like all these other properties that are based on
everything but the game.
Everything but D&D is super successful. It's like okay, Stranger Things, literally, like, look it up. At the time, like, the most watched TV show like ever. It was like right up there. Like 1 out of every 10 people like in the world watched it. It was something insane.
Right.
And then you have Critical Role. Oh, millions of people watching this thing. The highest numbers on Twitch ever. The largest Kickstarter, like, of all time. Amazon, like, buys them up left and right. Insane numbers. Okay, ridiculous. Baldur's Gate 3? Oh, just happened to win the top 5 Game of the Year awards. First time ever that's ever been done that one game won the top 5 Game of the Year awards. Some have done 4, but none have done all 5. They won all 5. All Dungeons and Dragons. As for D&D, they're like in the corner, like, yeah, that's us. That's based on us. I feel like they're like the little stepchild. They're like the kid. It's like the family. It's like, okay, here's the family tree. And almost like they're the parents. They're the parents that are living vicariously through their kids. And all these others are the kids winning awards and becoming president and, like, doing all this amazing stuff. And the parents are in the back taking pictures like, that's our kid. Oh, yay. And they're, like, cheering them on. I got to let my dog out. So hold down the fort, Derik.
Oh, no. All right. Well, I see people talking about 4th edition in the chat. So this is a good opportunity for me to hijack the stream and talk about 4th edition. 4th edition D&D was D&D, and the way I know this is because it was called fucking Dungeons and Dragons. So if you've released a game called Dungeons and Dragons, then you get to decide what D&D is. Guess what? They released that's D&D. Whether you want to like it or not, that's fine, but it's definitely D&D. Also, from a certain perspective, 4th edition Dungeons and Dragons had attack rolls, 6 ability scores, classes, levels, armor class. It had skills. What did I just describe? Could be 5th edition, could be 3rd edition, could be 4th edition. If you want to say that 4th edition isn't D&D, then you also have to say that 3rd, 4th, 5th, and maybe even 2nd edition aren't D&D as well.
All right. Well, I came in and I just heard what you said. Yeah, look, if you sit down and you look at the difference between 1st to 2nd, 2nd to 3rd, and 3rd to 4th, they're very different. Now, 4th is probably the most different because...
Well, with the benefit of hindsight, I don't think that 4th edition is as radical as people think it is. In some ways, I think 3rd edition from 2nd edition was more radical in some ways.
It was, but it felt more similar. I think the big issue with 4th, which is why I'm going to say it was so samey, is that the number one complaint, and I played a campaign from 1 to 20, is that because of the system of you had, what was it, your at-will powers, your daily, and your encounter powers. But they all felt the same. Everyone felt the same.
Never, ever. You know how many classes in Pathfinder 2 have cantrips, spells, and focus spells? A lot. A fucking lot. And no one ever complains about that. And you know what I just described?
Because it's not every
encounters and daily.
I know, but it's not every class. I know, but what they need to do to make it different is that every class was based on this template, and they all looked and felt the same,
except for all the classes that weren't.
Well, that's the thing. Is that later?
Like
no, but they did that later.
Like because when the game first came out.
No. I'm talking about the beginning. I actually never played the the remastered fourth or whatever it was called. I never played that one. I only played the original, like the original. So
I think the thing that people get lost in the weeds on here, though, is that fourth edition. The big departure there wasn't fourth edition; it was third edition. And why? Why do I say that? Because third edition was the first game to be created in the D&D lineup that was trying to create this concept of a balanced encounter and the encounter day and control the math and make it so that the game system, quote unquote, just worked. Right. It took experience points and put them into this encounter mold, which typically meant a combat encounter. I know a lot of people like to focus on the powers and all that other stuff, but the truth of the matter is the actual structural nature of the game fundamentally changed with third edition D&D, because we went from this kind of Wild West AD&D version where the idea of balance wasn't even really a concept or a thing.
So did the game
not third edition was
the same?
The game, well, that was fourth edition. In fact, I would say that. Well, no, but I'm just saying, like,
the game remains the same.
Third edition is, created the CR system and it created the encounter level system. And I mean, I still know that system like the back of my hand, right? If you have two CR3s, that's an EL5. So, if you have a CR6 and a CR4, that's an EL7.
So by the way, so Tim Pfeiffer said fourth edition took what was a video game and Magic the Gathering card game and mixed it into what was D&D. So there's all this conjecture and say, that's not true. Let me tell you, it's 100% true. I have sat down with Chris Perkins. With Perkins, me, John Statz, who at that time was the lead developer of World of Warcraft at Blizzard. Myself, Chris Perkins, John Statz, Chris Beamer, and Seth Lipton. We were all together. We were all at this D&D Game Expo thing in Washington, D.C. It was on his birthday. I remember this because Chris Perkins' birthday is on February 29th. He was turning 10 that year because he was 40. And we all talked about how they were making fourth edition. It just came out, and he was going through and talking to John, since John worked at Blizzard, about how they really wanted to become more like a video game or more like an MMO, specifically because they wanted to go digital. And at that time, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 and Icewind Dale was so popular that they felt like you couldn't do third edition D&D. And remember, those were all based on second edition D&D, which were much more modular than third edition. And they wanted to make it very easy, and they saw digital as the future. So they were like, okay, we really want it to be modular. And fourth edition was extremely modular and very easy to program and code for the future, which by the way never happened. But that was one of their goals. Their goal was to turn it into this very modular programmatic system, which they did, by the way. And here's the secret. I'm going to tell you a secret. Pathfinder 2nd Edition is exactly the same.
Yes,
it's extremely modular. In fact, it's even more modular, I would say.
Oh yes.
And
by the way,
and if you disagree with me, guess what? You're wrong. I work with the guy who wrote it. Okay, I know for a fact.
By the way, I don't know if you noticed this or not, but Ronald just released a video. And he had actually reached out to talk to me a little bit about it.
Oh, really?
Because he said, and he did a video about it, and he goes, "Is Pathfinder 2 like openly becoming fourth edition?" Because they have two new classes coming out.
Yeah.
Okay, the Commander.
Yes.
And the Guardian.
Mm-hmm.
And from their own language, I mean, this sounds very similar to the Fighter from fourth edition and the Warlord from fourth edition. And they're talking about having the Guardian have an ability to, quote, taunt their enemies into attacking them. I mean, we are talking, MMO style mechanics.
Yeah.
And why? Well, you know what? It turns out like there's a big disconnect with a lot of people, especially in the RPG space. And I'll tell you why. I'm guilty of this too. I try to be aware of it. It's a self-bias. In my general estimate, the people who play role-playing games, I think, tend to be a little bit smarter than the average person. You have to read. There's a lot of math. It definitely skews towards the academic. Case Western.
Oh, You're kind of smart. I mean, it's not Carnegie Mellon or MIT, but you're up there.
Again, those were the 3 schools I applied to: Case Western, Carnegie Mellon, MIT.
Did you get into CMU or MIT?
I got into Carnegie Mellon. I got into MIT on a wait list. So,
you know what?
If I could have, I probably would have gone. But
MIT was just ranked the #1 college in the world.
Case Western gave me more money, and it was near house.
No, I didn't want to go to MIT. I
would have. It was like my dream school. But anyways.
Oh, really? Well, for me, CMU was my dream school. So your dreams started to get crushed early.
The only thing I remember about CMU was some fence that
the fence paint, where you painted.
You could paint.
Yes.
Yeah, you could. And then you could paint whatever you want, and then you could paint over it.
But
and paint whatever you want.
But
you have to guard it because if you're not there, someone else can come and paint over it to like advertise for parties and that's like literally the #1 thing I remember from my tour there.
I actually did that a couple of times. Anyhow,
Anyways, so I tend to think that RPG players tend to be pretty smart, and what that means is that we also tend to be a little bit full of ourselves. And sometimes a little bit narcissistic in our mindset, and a lot of times
a
lot of time RPG players, they say that they want something, but they don't really actually want it. They wish that that's what they wanted, but deep down inside, in their heart of hearts, they actually.
By the way,
yeah, sure, but I'm just saying, I think it's people who are more intelligent are more prone to it, because
that's 100%.
You overthink the problem, and so. A lot of people end up asking for things to be put into their games, and then they're given them. What were people saying in 3rd edition? They were saying, "Fix this broken game." Wizards and clerics and druids are on another level. Fighters and rogues are pointless. Like, these other classes suck, and they're like, and also wizards and druids and swords, they get to do all these cool and amazing things. Also, I really like anime, and my fighter kind of sucks, but I really love playing my warrior in EQ. And so then 4th edition comes out, and they give people a really awesome fighter who can compete toe to toe, who has the same cool powers and abilities a wizard has, which is completely balanced against the wizard, so that just by picking one class, you didn't auto win the game. And then people were like, I know that's what I asked for, but I just don't like it. It's not hitting
people. People don't,
and it's like,
I won't even. That's a whole subject. That's a very interesting. So I've told you that case, the very famous case study where it was the Coke versus Pepsi challenge. So back in the 80s, they had. So back in the 80s, when I was a kid, where none of you were probably alive except for some of you, they had this challenge called the Coke versus Pepsi challenge, where they would go around the country, mostly at like malls or flea markets, and they would set up a little booth, and they would have you taste test Coke versus Pepsi, and they would give you 2 cups, and then the thing was people would choose Pepsi because they were like, oh, which one did you like? And they're like, I like cup A. They're like, that's Pepsi. You like Pepsi. And people were like, huh, really? Thinking that hopefully that then they would go buy Pepsi. The thing that happened is that people were so ingrained in their thinking that they would go to people. It's this thing happened where they would say beforehand, they would ask them, which do you prefer, Coke or Pepsi? And they're like, oh, only Coke. I hate Pepsi. I'm only a Coke person. That's all I drink is Coke. I love Coke. It's my drink. And then they would do the challenge. And then to say, which did you choose? And they'd say, you chose Pepsi, not Coke. You like Pepsi more. And then they would argue with themselves saying, well, I was wrong. And these people were so angry that they couldn't accept the fact that they chose something else. And there was this cognitive dissonance between what they said and what they did. It's a very large paper. It goes into the whole, it's basically about cognitive dissonance, about how you say you want something even though you really don't. And even when you're presented with what you think you want, you still don't want. It's fascinating.
And this is a long-winded way of saying that because again, the future of Wizards of the Coast and D&D, I mean, Wizards of the Coast obviously is more than just D&D, but for our purposes, we really just care about the D&D. I don't know, because I don't think the player base itself knows what they want. And whatever they're telling you that they want, I'm telling you, that's not what they really want.
Yeah, not only that, remember, D&D 5th edition was the first one that they actually created using almost nothing but public opinion and public sourcing. Remember, they had that year-long playtest, D&D Next, and they're like, we made all of our decisions based on what you wanted. And I kept thinking, Really? Is that the smartest thing to do?
No, design by committee is horrible. I know everyone's obsessed with playtesting and stuff like that, but honestly, I really do hope that for like these real, like the Dagger Hearts and the MCDMs out there, I hope the playtesting thing is entirely performative. I really hope it is. I hope they take all those responses and they throw them away. I really mean that, because I do not want them looking at that stuff. Just design your game. Give me your vision. If it's bad, the market will punish you. And if it's good, the market will reward you. But don't try to weasel your way in through playtesting and public opinion feedback. Just do it. And if you're good, you'll do it well. And if you're bad, you won't. And end of story. Just make your damn game and let us buy it and play it and decide.
Well, here's a perfect example of, Mark's not on the right now, but he said the one of the top things that the Pathfinder team regretted was taking out residents. So if you remember the Pathfinder 2nd edition playtest, every stat has something assigned to it for everyone, okay?
Right. In other words, there's no dump stat.
There's no dump stat except charisma. Charisma actually is a dump stat. And because strength is usually, your attack, if you're physical, dex is your reflex, wisdom is your will save, right, and so forth. So all your
bonus skills, cons, bonus hit points.
So everything has a direct correlation to your character, except charisma. And charisma is totally a dump stat unless you get a character that needs charisma. There's no point in having charisma. Correct. And so to fix that, they added resonance, which was
it's basically how many items you can attune.
Yes, it was basically the better your resonance, the more magic items you can use.
Right. And by the way, I think people were fine with resonance.
Oh no, they hated it.
What they didn't like about resonance was that resonance, because this is very much like a daily magical item use and like a healing surge from 4th edition. And the reason they put it in there is because it works. And I've seen games where like people who are actual gamers play Pathfinder 2 and it does break the game. And the reason it breaks the game is because resonance also determine how many potions you could drink a day, or how many uses of your wand you could use, or how many scrolls you could cast per day. Yes. And so if you only had 10 resonance points, it meant that if you drank 10 healing potions and you went to drink an 11th healing potion, it wouldn't work. And people lost their minds at this.
Yes. Well, also keep in mind that was back when people would, I remember, because when I was playing Pathfinder 1st edition, like they would stack up on 100 healing potions, and not even healing potions. They would stock
Cure
up
Light
on
Wounds wands.
Cure Light, right? They would just have endless Cure Light Wounds wands, endless, and they would just and Eric Mona has gone on record that he hates that. He hates.
Yes, of course, it ruined the game. But I mean, let me do you one step better, right? So one of the challenges is like, can you complete an entire adventure in Pathfinder 2nd edition in the duration of a 10-minute spell? And a lot of people have, because you cast your buffs for the day, your big 10-minute duration buffs, especially heroism, which is one of the best buff spells in the Pathfinder 2nd edition game.
An entire day? Oh, I don't. My game's no way. But
the point is, you go into an encounter. That encounter might take 20 to 30 seconds, right, in game time. Yeah. And then obviously afterwards, your hit points are low. You have to heal up, which takes 10 minutes.
Yes.
Unless you own hundreds of scrolls of heal. And the cost GP breakdown on that is trivial. And within under a minute, you can heal everybody to full. Yes. And then you go into the next encounter, which is now you're only in the 2nd minute of the adventuring day.
Yes.
And then you go into the 3rd encounter and you kill that. And you go into the 4th encounter and you kill that. And you'll explore the dungeon later after everything's dead. Right. But you want to get the most benefit for your buff. And so we've theorized that you could run through an entire adventure, or at least an entire part of an adventure, like one dungeon complex, in the time it would take you to do a 10-minute buff. And the reason is because you can have infinite scrolls and you can have infinite whatever you want. And because modern D&D games, especially 4th edition is guilty of this too, by the way, except 4th edition did solve this issue because it had daily magic item restriction uses. The gold is exponential. And what it means is that by the time your character's like 8th or 9th level, buying a level 1 healing scroll, it's literally lint from your pocket. Right. It costs you nothing.
Well, they changed it because magic potions are pretty expensive and they suck. They're really bad. Okay, they're
listen,
very bad in Pathfinder.
You don't got to tell. They're horrible in Pathfinder.
No, they're and that's on purpose and they're expensive as hell. So it's like it's people never. They're like they use them literally as you're supposed to because they use them in combat and that's it. It's emergencies. Imagine it. Imagine this scenario in Pathfinder Second Edition. In my game,
okay, you're a sword and board fighter, or you're a dual wielding ranger,
right?
And you get in trouble, you take some damage. Oh no, I need to heal. The cleric is over there. I can't get the heal spell. Right. Oh, that's okay. I have a healing potion. Great. First, you have to put down your sword. Second, you have to pull out your potion. Third, you have to drink the potion.
Correct.
Fourth, you have to pick back up your sword. It is going to take you over an entire turn.
Correct.
Just to be able to heal yourself for a scant number of hit points.
Well, that's why. That's why our guys have the wand, the glove of storing, and they always put a healing potion in it, so they can pop it out.
That's somewhat of a hack around, but it's just the game itself is not really designed for that.
No, the point is that they did solve that through other ways because like wands you can only use once or maybe twice, and when if you use it twice, there's a chance it gets broken, blows up. So they did manage to limit it, but they were upset because they wish the amount of people who said no on Resonance and they listened to them, and they all regretted it. From what I know, is they wish they put it in because in the end, what they were really trying to do was make charisma matter, and now it still doesn't. And it doesn't matter. Actually,
charisma matters less now in Pathfinder 2nd Edition Remastered than it did before, because before, charisma was always the default stat that got used for DCs that were innate.
Yeah.
And now it will default to whatever your stat is that you're already using for your spellcasting.
It's almost useless. It's unfortunately it is.
Well, no, it's good for diplomacy. It's good for intimidation.
I know, but the point is that it's
what's the other charisma skill?
I don't know.
Intimidation, diplomacy,
lore. No, lore
is bluff.
I don't know.
Yeah, bluff might be a charisma.
The point is that, but here's the thing: is that people kind of like having a dump stat because once again, it's like you kind of like having something to. You don't want things perfectly balanced, so in a weird way. You kind of want something that makes it easier for you to build your character, because then you get the analysis. You get analysis paralysis because
it's good. I want people making agonizing decisions. It's funny.
Well, there's a difference between agonizing and analysis paralysis because it's a subtle difference. The agonizing decision is, you get different outcomes, but they're not good, they're not bad, they're just different, but they're different levels of good and bad, as opposed to analysis paralysis of just like, I don't know what to do because I don't have enough information.
Right. And, I will say that it's funny because I do see some people in chat who, by the way, are not wrong, that they talk about, charisma is useful for the face character. It's good for non-combat, etc. But what's really funny about that is a lot of the people who say that are also people who routinely allow social encounters to be dealt with through just dialogue and speaking. So in a sense, you're making charisma even more worthless.
Oh yeah, that's
like, imagine if my character could jump over a pit, like a really long pit, because I gave the GM a really good description of my run up to the pit, and he said, you don't need to roll athletics, you make it.
So believe it or not, everything we discussed I can bring back to the main topic, which is that
we're all over the place today, folks.
No, we actually are. We are. But here's the thing. It's that we really need someone, and I think that D&D 5th edition has gone in a very weird direction, because it went from no one cares about it, put it on life support, to, oh my God, this became the most popular thing in the world. Right. What do we do? And they realized that, things like the economy completely don't work. There's no there's a lot of things in D&D that don't work, and no one seems to care except for people who really do care. It's one of those like, no one cares except for people who really do care.
That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that weird cognitive dissonance where everyone's just like, there's such a problem. And it's like, okay, but did you? No, I mean, it doesn't really bother me, but I imagine it is a problem for other people.
Right.
It's
well,
like,
right.
okay,
It's very strange the way the game has sort of evolved, because if D&D, it's a very strange time, and I feel like, how do I say it, is that because of the popularity and because of where it was going and what people were buying it has become very homogenized, and that they let the DMs Guild and people like myself come out with a grimdark module or a module about slavery, or topics they would never ever touch in a million years, which 20 years ago,
or I'm a hyper intelligent pile of goo that also lives inside of a weapon.
Yeah, exactly. That's me. But the point is that this is stuff that D&D, of course, like 20 years ago, they would of course touch this. Like not even that long ago, like 20 years ago, there's some pretty crazy stuff out there.
Well, I mean, again, I am not.
It was pretty crazy.
I'm not a rabble. I'm not a rabble rouser, but D&D understands that the only way that they could mess this up, and by the way, they still managed to do this, so good, kudos on them. As long their goal isn't to please people, it's to not offend.
Well,
anybody. That's
the problem, right? It's become not to please, but not to offend.
Right. It's just let's aim. They're the person who goes to a class and they go, I am aiming for a C. I'm aiming for a C. A C is passing, right? If I get a C plus, great. But a C is more than enough. That's all I need. As long as I don't get a bunch of people who are really upset about this book that I just released.
So here's the thing.
Be fine.
Okay,
That's horrible design.
It's terrible design. And Cynthia Williams or whoever, that's how they've been designing D&D. That's how they've been designing Magic.
I do agree. It's all fun. Gabe says aim low and then still miss. Yeah, like that is true. That's my point. They did aim very low and somehow still managed to miss the bar. And despite having an entire corporate structure built around trying to be the most community forward, still managed to literally piss off everybody with this OGL thing last year.
So, oh God, yeah. Well, because the funny thing is, and that's a whole other topic. That's the one I should have done. It's that I think that literally their entire structure of everything they were going to do was based on they're like, oh, it wasn't that big a deal. I think everything was based on them getting rid of OGL. And because they didn't, it is literally messed up their everything. Like everything since has now been thrown to shit, and they still can't figure out what to do.
Absolutely. And you know what the other is? What are they supposed to do? Right? Like if you talk to 20 different people who are supposedly in the 5e sphere, you're probably going to get like 20 different answers. Like I don't think that there is an answer. Right?
Well, they couldn't. You can't. The problem is that they couldn't do both. That what they needed to do was, and True. I said it, is that if they say, okay, we're coming out with 6th edition, and 6th edition has a GSL. And you guys can go play 5th edition all you want and go play in your sandbox, but that's not good enough. And I'll tell you why. Because they just said this. They said, oh, we want to use AI. Chris Cox said how they want to use AI because D&D has millions and millions of words of existing games and story, and we want to use that in the future. So if they do a GSL, then suddenly they're cutting themselves off from their own product, and they're putting a line in the sand where, okay, there's everything pre-6th edition and post, and they can't go back because then that's OGL, and then it screws up their GSL license. They need one license. Like, I won't get into it, but this is happening because I'm dealing with Orc, and Orc is very interesting. And, like, you need one license that governs everything. And the one license that governed everything is open source. And that's not what they want. So they're like, okay, the only option we have to do is to get rid of that license because we can't have 2 licenses because that doesn't work either. And so they're like, okay, we're going to get rid of it. And that didn't work. And now they're screwed because they're like, damn it, we don't know what to do because the one thing that we had messed everything up. And they're like, it's fascinating. And you know who's going through that right now is Paizo, because people keep asking me like, oh, Steve, are you coming out with stuff for Remastered? And we're like, kind of. Here's the problem. You can't you can't use OGL in remastered content, so like if there's something in a book that came out in Pathfinder a year ago, I can't use it. You can't mix and match. You're not allowed to mix and match. So I am stuck with 3 books. Everything, if I want to come out with, if I want to refer to any Pathfinder product, I can only refer to the core 3 books, and that's it. I can't refer to any of the thousands of Pathfinder books that have come out, which really puts me in a bind. And that's exactly what's happening to D&D if they tried to do a GSL for 6th edition, is that they're going to be stuck with a very small subset of their own product, so it completely screwed them up.
All right, well, let's hypothesize here. Okay, Stephen, you're now the president of Wizards of the Coast, and you go, Magic will take care of itself. I just want to focus on D&D.
Sure.
And they basically come to you. You're sitting down. You've got
Magic, by the way, as you know, has a 2 to 3 year development cycle, so it really will take care of itself, because you can't even, that ship is long sailed. Like, you're making decisions for 2027 at this point. So
you've got Crawford, you've got Perkins, whatever. Your team is there. Okay, and they basically say, okay, boss, what's the direction? Where are we going with this? What should we do? Like, what is going to both we're business. Forget the shareholders, forget the stockholders.
Yes.
If you're doing this as a business, we want to sell books, we want to be successful, but we are also stewards of a game and a brand that has touched the lives of so many people for 50 years and has a lot of meaning. We want to create what we feel truly is the best version of Dungeons and Dragons yet. What does that look like?
Well, I can't comment on the new books yet. So first I would have to see the new books and see what direction they went into for 5e or whatever.
Well, let me ask you this. What direction? Let's do it. Let's do kind of like an A or B test here. Let's say that the new edition, the new revised, whatever, 5th edition, do you make it more complicated or less complicated?
You do neither. You do both.
You keep it the same.
No, you do both. You do neither and the same. Here's what you do. I've been thinking about this. Now, I'd have to actually, off the top of my head, I was thinking about how I always do this. I think about, okay, these are decisions that have already been solved by other people in other industries that are even bigger. And one of the perfect examples is the car industry. So when you go get a car, there's different types of cars. You know, you can get, just a regular Hyundai or a Toyota. So you have like the real low end, I guess the Hyundai's down there. Then you have the mid-level, which are like the Toyotas. And then you have high levels like the BMWs and the Audis and those cars, right? So you have 3 different customer bases. So each one is addressed. And then even within the Hyundais and the Toyotas, they have subsets. They have the subsets of the cars. It's like, okay, do you want the basic version of the car? Right. Or do you want the premium or the premium plus? So they even have subsets within that. So right now, they've diluted D&D into this one version of D&D. And there kind of is this unofficial version of advanced or more, detailed.
So what I'm hearing is you would come out with basic D&D and advanced D&D. Maybe
you come out with those lines are not a bad idea, but it's not a bad idea to come out with, well, this is how it works, is that if you come out with versions of books that are limited, and if look, I'm going to come out with a book, I'm just making it up, I don't know, like, kill Vecna, all right? By the way, which is already an adventure. Vecna dies. So we'll say, okay, that's like, I'm killing Vecna in hell, okay? Is that really going to appeal to everyone? Probably not. Like, can I turn that into something that everyone on planet Earth, actually, you probably would, because Stranger Things, okay, Vecna's a bad example. Let's say, kill the Balrog. There we go. Very, very rare. No one knows what a Balrog is, except for the hardcore. So we'll have an adventure called Kill the Balrog. So can we take that adventure and make it accessible to everyone, or should we instead put our resources into making that like something special, hardcore, almost elitist, if you will, almost gatekeeping, if you will, and charge $100-200 for that thing, and only sell a couple thousand versions of it, and make a ton of money because you're selling less for more, which is what car companies do, and keep everyone happy.
Right. I mean, that works for me.
You know what I'm getting at? Basically, it is. Yeah, it's not necessarily advanced, but like I would have basically almost have computers do this.
No,
car companies do this.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is like, let's see, like.
By the way, do you know what I would do? The first thing I would do?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you right now. I actually thought about this. I would sit down with the design team and I would say, Age of Worms, we're redoing it, baby. Best adventure ever. We're redoing it.
Imagine if the basic D&D book, right, was this thin, right? And like there was no, it's everything that you would need to play the game, and it's 100 pages long. Now, obviously, there's room to expand beyond that, but rather than trying to make it part of the whole the same, you just create it as its own line, and you just say, "Hey, look,
we had a super chat."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think the advanced basic thing is actually really, really
well. So, and
by the way, it worked before, so why wouldn't it work?
Well, and so with Lord of the Unfinished, I'm a person running a small analog TTRPG accessory business. Do you think the move to digital will hurt us? Will there be a place for digital analog accessories? Yes.
Yeah.
Because the people you've been selling those analog accessories to are going to be the same people now. I mean, I think.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. I mean, obviously, moving to digital is not great if you sell analog accessories.
Not great.
That being said, I think number one, there will always be people who will be like, you could take my dice when you take them out of my cold dead hand.
Right.
And secondly, as your product becomes more and more of a premium, in theory, you should be able to charge more and more money.
Exactly. That's what I was going to get at. It's like, you really have to figure out, like, okay, if I make my product, I'm just making these numbers up, $10, am I going to sell 100,000 of these? And if I make it $100, am I only going to sell 1,000 of these? No, you'll probably, if you make it $10, you'll probably sell 1,000 of them, and you make it $100, you'll probably sell 1,000 of them. So you might as well make it $100 and sell that. Like your audience is limited, so you might as well make the most of it.
Right.
And I believe that. But my point is that, and someone pointed out, someone said, by the way, what I just described is already happening. It's called OSR and like Shadow Dark, and you're completely right, which is why that D&D should get a piece of that and say, go full in and say, yeah, we're going to come out with different levels or versions.
This is going back to what I was talking about when I said that the bigger change was from 2nd edition to 3rd edition versus 3rd edition to 4th edition. And the reason is, it's something that people forget about is it's not about the rules. Yes, OSR games are rules light. They don't have as many complicated rules, but that's not the thing that makes them, why they're, in my opinion, not compatible with what the D&D brand is. The reason is because of the ethos behind what that game is about. It's about the style of game that it encourages.
Right.
Old school games are all about the GM just pulling stuff out of their ass. It's about, ignoring the character sheet in favor of whatever sounds reasonable, right? It's not about builds. It's not about feat trees. It's about interacting with the world. You open up the door, yeah, there's a demi-lich behind it, and it kills you all. I don't know what you want to tell me, right? There's no hyperfixation on balance and making sure this PC is the same power as this PC. You could play Shadow Dark, and your warrior character, maybe 2 people are warrior characters, and one, every time they get an advancement, they roll the nut on the 2d6 advancement table, because it's random, by the way. When you level up in Shadow Dark, it's random what you get. They could get the +1 to attack like 6 times in a row, and you don't. And so like their character is hitting like every single time.
I mean, unfortunately,
and your character is not.
So the way D&D is structured now is that they went full Hollywood. And what do I mean by that? Is that they went full Hollywood because all of their products now are centered on their characters, like Vecna and what is it, Mordecaium or whatever his name is,
Mordenkainen,
and Glory of the Giants. Like all of them have, like anyone who's a specific named character in D&D, they're going full in on, and I get it. Like they're protecting the brand. These are things that no one else can do. So they're making it like, oh, you want to play with Vecna? You can only play with D&D. Well, I hate to break it to you. I can write a Vecna adventure, and I don't need your permission to do it. It's like, I'm not the only one out there. And yes, that's a way to do it. You can lean into your properties. But why don't you do what, I don't know, Paizo is doing, or what they used to do in Dungeon Magazine? Like, I just said, and you can actually, wait, I'll do it better. You can do both. So Age of Worms, as you well know, is my favorite adventure of all time. That adventure was a who's who of characters. Tensor was in there. You went to the city of Greyhawk. You fought, name a classic monster. It is in that adventure. That adventure is fantastic. You freaking get the Rod of Seven Parts. You freaking get the Hand of Vecna. You are freaking going to the moon. That thing is, you're killing a god. You're fighting Tiamat's mate.
But Stephen,
it was so good.
When am I running the coffee shop?
Oh God, it's so good.
In Age of Worms.
I know, it's so good.
Which adventure do I get to run the coffee shop? Because that's what I really want to know.
There's lots of adventures out there for you. But the point is that you can't have your cake and eat it too. I'm actually very curious, and I'm very excited to see the new Vecna adventure. But they keep disappointing me. Because it could be really good. I'm a big Vecna fan. Like, I do like Vecna quite a bit. And
Vecna was the arc villain of my first 4E campaign, which went 1 to 30. And by the time the group had gotten to the epic level, see, they found out that one of the PCs had secretly been in service to Vecna for a long time, but he had broke with her, kind of like Snape broke with Voldemort. And so he was basically like, like their ace up their sleeve. And then as they got to epic levels, it turns out that this whole thing that they've been working against was actually a plan of Vecna to kill the Raven Queen and usurp her portfolio over death, so that Vecna could become the god of secrets and death. And the group led up to it, and then they had to get the hand, and they had to get the eye, and they had to get the sword of Kaz.
Wow. That sounds fun.
Yeah, and then the characters went in there against a level 37 solo controller with a bunch of other stuff, and it was awesome, and that was pretty sweet.
But here's
that was the end of our campaign.
So Age of Worms is a perfect example of that. Would be, I'd say, okay, everyone, here's your homework. Here's Age of Worms. Read it. That is the direction of our adventures. High fantasy adventures, like. But you got to feel like freaking. You want to feel like Indiana Jones.
No, I think that there's a. I mean, again, this is the cognitive dissonance. If you listen to people, they're like, I don't want that. I want to sit in the inn and talk about how pretty the weather is and how cute the cats are.
You know what? You could do that in your real life. You know what? That reminds me of a time. I'm going to tell you a funny story. Want to hear another Stephen story? I got a good Stephen story.
And by the way, there are slice of life RPGs out there. Okay, we've covered them on my channel. We've covered Ryutama. We've covered Wanderhome. Tavern Tales, Tiny Tales is literally a RPG game about you and your friends owning a tavern, and your biggest concern is the town drunk starts trying to get into a fight with somebody, right? Like in your tavern. Oh so God, again, it's.
I gotta clean up my desk. It's such a mess right now. My desk is. Yeah. Oh, look what I have. Look, Barkeep. Look what I got, Scott.
Oh yeah, Barkeep of the Borderlands. I have that.
Yeah. Like there's a lot. There's no shortage of these things. Okay. There's lots of these. That's not what you want. And not only that.
Right. So yeah, see, this is Wanderhome.
I have that too.
Okay. It's literally a book about how you travel the world and you explore yourself.
Wanderhome.
And you explore yourself and the world around you. That game is great if that's the kind of experience you want. Yeah. D&D is fundamentally and in full. It is a heroic fantasy adventure dungeon combat game. It has been that. It's always been that.
You got this
Every
one?
edition. I do not have that one.
Oh, this thing has won 1 million awards. I'm kind of surprised.
Well, that thing's also sort of persona non grata.
What?
Persona non grata.
Who is you?
No, that book.
What do you mean?
One of the authors is not a nice person.
Oh no, this book has lots of issues. It is quite risque. I'll leave it at that. But it is interesting.
Right. Well, but my point is just that D&D is this identity crisis because, again, the whole structure of the game is designed for heroic fantasy adventure, kind of in dungeons with dragons and combat. And everything in the game's ecosystem is tied around that. But when you start trying to run, barista coffee shop adventures in Strixhaven with that game engine, it just falls apart.
Oh,
know?
Yeah. So, look. So, I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I'm going to fucking toot my own horn. My adventure, by Jewel of the Indigo Isle. I know you have a copy too there. I have a couple of people. My goal when I wrote this is that this thing is high adventure, balls to the wall. You are freaking, by the end, you have it is like Avengers Endgame by the end. Like, you're like, what the hell just happened? And you are saving the goddamn world. And during the saving of the world, hundreds, if not thousands of people die too. Like, it is, it's not just, oh, we saved the world and we won and they all lost. It's like, oh no, there's a price to be paid. Just like, which is what made those movies so powerful. It's like, there's a price to be paid for saving the world, and you have to make those damn tough decisions.
Which is why, if you're going to play Jewel of the Indigo Isles,
yes,
you probably should not use tiny taverns as your system of choice. A slice of life fantasy role-playing game where you are proprietors of a tavern in a high fantasy setting. Right. And instead of being warriors and wizards and thieves, the player characters are bartenders, performers, servers, chefs, or even bouncers.
Right.
So this is a game that is designed to literally run a coffee shop or a bar. And trying to fit that style of game into D&D would be like trying to fit this game into Jewel of the Indigo Isle. It would be non-compatible.
So wait, there was a couple things we did when I wrote it and designed it. First, I used, and I can't believe this. Now, I have read, people are joking, it's like, Steve, you have everything. I do. I've run so many adventure paths I can't even count, and I've read most of them. And one thing I found interesting, and I found out why later, by the way, because it almost killed me, is that all these adventure paths are written that no one uses traditional storytelling techniques that movies use. Like, so if you ever take a script writing class, scripts have a very specific cadence to them. Like, if you take a script writing class, they'll tell you like where the acts are, what page things are supposed to happen. Like, there's a cadence to them. And that's actually something good, because when you watch a movie, you know what to kind of expect. And when you go against that cadence, it's either going to be a genius, like a Pulp Fiction, by the way, which totally broke all the rules, and everyone loved it, or it comes like a Southland Tales, which no one understands. So it can go either way. But the point is that having that built-in story structure, which people understand, helps in the cadence and the understanding of the story. The thing is, no one ever did that in any role-playing games and any adventures. I never saw it. So when I wrote it, I designed it using a script writing methodology. And there's a couple of people now have run it and finished it. There's actually professional GMs have run it. And they're running it again and again now. And they're saying they freaking loved it. And they said their characters felt like it was a movie. And I was like, yeah, that's what I kind of want. I want it to feel like you were the hero of freaking MCU back when it was good. Like, like you are the MCU hero. And you
Phase 3 MCU.
Yes. No, seriously. Like, that is my goal. Like, you should feel like that. And you should have this unbelievable epic adventure. And by the way, do you know what does that? and won 5 Games of the Year awards in a row. There's a little thing called Baldur's Gate 3, which, by the way, does that in spades. That people still can't stop talking about. It's like, yeah, because it's freaking amazing. Because you feel like a damn god and you're making these big decisions and things are happening. And my dog's going crazy over here. What are you doing, dogs? I hear craziness going on. And so you need that. And do they all need to be like that?
You need that. Or maybe a lot of people. I do not. In fact, BG3 has no interest to me.
Well,
at all.
No, but that's the thing. You don't need that. So there's this rule. I don't know if they still do it, but there used to be this rule with the adventure paths at Paizo is that they have 2 a year that go, so they have 6 books. One adventure path would be traditional.
Right.
And one adventure path was the crazy
one. Yeah.
Right. And so they would switch off. So they always do kind of a traditional one and then a crazy one. Traditional one and a crazy one. I would say do that too. Do that with D&D. It's like, okay, they don't need to all be like that. Maybe we do an adventure path with taverns. Maybe you're trying to become the best tavern keeper in the world. And there's some competition you need to enter. But you know what? I can make that fun. I'm like, cool. Maybe you have to go on an adventure to find all these crazy ingredients from all these rare monsters and to build and make concoctions and drinks and food that you can't make anywhere else so that you could win this competition. I can turn that into an adventure. Trust me. The point is that you just need to have them freaking fun instead of like, oh, we're going to make this adventure. Okay, this adventure needs to have, and then they go literally down the checklist. Does it have Vecna? Does it have beholders in it? Does it have, what other IPs do we own? Here's the list of our IPs. We got to get at least half of them in there. It's like, every time, really? Every adventure, really? And that's what it's becoming. It's sort of becoming like an IP checklist every time. Also, by the way, not for nothing, do you know how many books WoTC released last year for new products? I think I asked you that.
I don't know, 2?
4.
3?
4. Exactly. And they're like, they're not making any money. I'm like, because you're not releasing products. You release 4 books in a year. Of course you're not going to make any money, silly.
I mean, I got to imagine that the demand is pretty low.
Not 4 books. I mean, come on. Yeah. It's not that low. They're still selling tens of thousands of these books. That's something else, by the way. You got to come out with adventures. You got to come out with products so people buy it and get excited and they talk about it. That's the other thing. No one's talking about anything because nothing's coming out.
I mean, look. I mean, if you look at the interwebs, look at YouTube. I mean, Rules Lawyer just did an hour-long thing on 4th edition. No Nats hung up his hat. Like, after the OGL, like there were so many people out there who were just kind of like burned out, tired. You had, everybody was either going into, we're coming up with the next, it's totally not a fantasy heartbreaker. We're coming out with the next totally awesome game that's going to totally supplant D&D, right? And everybody started, and then Paizo started, spinning their wheels. Pathfinder remastered. It's totally different, but it's not totally different. And just keep buying our books, please, God. And all their production schedule got screwed up. And God knows, 5th edition, 6th edition, 6th edition, D&D 1, D&D 1 forever, D&D 1 for all for one.
Oh, I like that
the last
D&D
year,
one for all and all for one.
The last year and a half, if you're an RPG consumer, it's been pretty tempting to just say, I'm going to sit this one out.
You're 100% right. And the thing is, and it's been proven, as soon as you announce, cars do this too. Again, as soon as you announce that new model, well, the old model's history, no one wants the old model. And as soon as they announce D&D 1, they're like, no one wants to buy it. I mean, that could also be a reason why they only came out with 4 books, because they're thinking, well, people are going to buy this. And then remember, it's like...
Now, see, what's funny about that is that the last year or so of maybe 8 months of 3.5, technically, 3rd edition, were some of my favorite books that ever got released for that edition. And the reason why is because, number 1, the edition was coming to a close. They knew that. They were already working on 4th edition. Number 2, a lot of the books that came out, and specifically I'm talking about Monster Manual 5, Book of Nine Swords, Tome of Battle, and Dungeonscape, took kind of concepts that they were workshopping in their 4th edition discussions and put them into a 3rd edition book as sort of a, almost like a preview, but also sort of like a test bed. I love those. Those books were crazy. It didn't even feel like 3rd edition. And I loved them. I loved them for that because it did feel like it was something new and refreshing. And even though I knew that the edition was ending, in fact, I have one of it's either Monster Manual 4 or Monster Manual 5. I bought it. I bought the book knowing I would probably never get a chance to put it to the table. And I wrote in the inside cover of it, basically something like, I can't believe it. In another few months, 4th edition D&D will be out, and this 3rd edition D&D will be a thing of the past. There's so many books, so many adventures, so many classes that we never got to play, we never got to experience, and it feels like a real shame. I literally wrote this essay in the front cover of one of my books because I was just being really emo and feeling myself or something. But I
was being emo.
I was being really emo. Look, it was the mid 2000s. Okay, I was feeling really emo, or late 2000s. But anyways, point is that it was experimental and it was exciting and it was fun, but it was also, yes, it was a bit sad because you were like, I know these books aren't going to be worth much if I'm going to go play.
Yeah, but the point is, it's the game. It remains the same. Remember, they're like, oh, it's not a new edition. So what do they care? Put your money where your mouth is. If it's not a new edition, they keep coming out with books.
That was the dumbest thing that was ever said in D&D history. So yes.
I mean, right. So there's so wait, it is a new edition? No, it's not. It's an old edition. No, we're fine tuning it. I'm like, oh my God.
What they should do is be completely honest and be like, listen, world, listen, America. It's totally a new edition. All the books that you own are basically going to be useless except for the lore. And even then we're going to update that probably too.
They would never do that.
But hey, wait. But because we're being honest with you, you got to just keep buying the books until the new edition comes out. Okay.
Well,
okay.
Wait. Okay. So there's something very interesting happening right now in the world. Did you see Fallout, the TV series?
Of course I didn't.
Of course.
I don't watch television, movies, or video games.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know all those. Well, anyhow, so the Fallout TV series came out, which is interesting. So
I heard it's very good.
I loved it. I love it. It's really good. I know people are like, no, it's not good. I'm like, well, I hate to break it to you, you're wrong. I get a whole show on why you're wrong.
I would actually be a good litmus test for that because I know nothing about Fallout.
Well, I watched it with my parents, and let me tell you something. They know nothing. They didn't even know. They knew nothing about it, and they were like, "This is great."
I do know that it's a video game set in a post-apocalyptic America.
It's a very funny. It's like a 50s. It's basically based on what post-apocalyptic world would look like based on 50s propaganda, like an alternate version of America. It's very goofy. It's actually really based on another game called Wasteland, which I bought at a shopping mall in the 80s for my Apple II Plus. That's how old I am, and I love that game. It's one of my favorite games and the best art ever. So that's how old this game's very old. Anyhow, the point is that when Halo came out, the Halo TV show, they were like, oh, it's going to bump sales. Nothing happens. Okay? When the D&D movie comes out, everyone's going to go buy D&D. Nothing happens. Halo came out, which no one expected. No one cared. And look at it. The sales for Fallout are through the roof. Servers are crashing. I think they sold 5 million copies of Fallout last month or last week. It was either last week or last month of all versions combined because of the freaking TV show.
I'm going to go out on a limb here. Could it be that it's because that show, Fallout, was actually good?
I hate to break it to you, but yes. It actually is a good show. It also
with a compelling story, good casting,
and it's fun. And I hate to say it, there's a lot of these shows are not fun. People are like, "Oh, Steve, you got to watch Last of Us." I'm like, no, I don't care. It's incredibly depressing. And I'm like, you know what? I got enough of that in my life. I don't need to watch that. All right. I'm like, I've gotten to the point in my life. It's funny because it was my dad's birthday last week. And I
Mazel tov.
I met my dad, and I went to Florida and saw my dad, my mom, and my brother, who I never see because he does movies for a living, so he literally is like, most of his life he's not like at his house. In fact, when I go to LA, I just stay at his house because he's not there because it's empty. So he's in Atlanta filming Saturday Night Live 75, by the way, which is awesome. It looks like an amazing movie. It's about the 90 minutes before the first episode of Saturday Night Live, and it has the cast. Like, there's people on Saturday Night Live you can't believe who was there.
It's a doc.
No, it's fictional. It's fictional.
Oh, it's fictional. Okay.
It's by what's his name? Jason from Predator Ghostbusters. He's doing
Jason
this.
Reitman.
Jason Reitman. Danny does all of Jason Reitman's movies, all of them. So we're sitting down to watch this, and my brother has gotten to the point where he's like poo-pooing things because everything needs to be serious. Like, I need to watch, like, he's like watching Fallout. He's like, this is crap. You know, it's like he only wants to watch like serious movies and serious, like, it's an art form. It's something that's art. And like, right. I get it, Danny. You do this for a living, and you see all the things that we don't see because this is what you do. He could tell if people's costumes aren't fitting right. He could tell if they have clips on the back to hold the costume in place. Like, he knows all that stuff, right? That I don't care. I'm like, dude, you know why I'm watching this? Because it's silly and it's fun and it's escapism and it looks beautiful.
I mean,
that's all I want.
I mean, in a way, it sounds to me like you just described, in theory, what D&D was.
You're 100% right.
It was silly and it was fun and it was exciting.
Yes.
But it was also, but it was also a game that literally had, I mean, the big B spells create a big floating hand, right? That floats around and punches people, right? You had Qual's feather tokens that could literally, you take a feather and throw it in front of you and it would turn into like a boat anchor or a tree or a swan boat.
Yeah.
It was always a silly game. And, it was sincere about it, but it was silly. It wasn't like it was literally being played for fart jokes, but it was never meant. The whole ecosystem, it was a fun game. That's why people played it, and why people, I mean, we think people are obsessed with D&D now. I was too young, but like, my understanding is that like in the 70s and the 80s, people were, I mean, obsessed with D&D because this is before computers were even remotely as good as they are today. That this was like the hottest new tech of all time. Like, it was unthinkable.
It was, well, think about this. Like, back then, there was only like, you only had 6 or 7 television stations. Okay. Right. That's it. Okay. No one had cable. I mean, I had cable, but no one, and even my cable had 30 channels and 20 of those channels were garbage. They were like, they were unwatchable. Yeah. So you really only had 10 channels as opposed to 5 if you didn't have cable. Right.
Let me put it another way. Compare the graphics quality of your theater of the mind, okay, with Pong or Asteroids. And now compare the graphics quality of your theater of the mind in 2024 with Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, yeah.
Right? That's the problem. Because in 1974, 1976, you're going up against an Atari 2600 or whatever came up before that.
Michael Borrell says only rich kids had HBO back then. Well, I lived in New York and we got cable.
Rich, privileged,
my dad's a doctor. What do you want? Okay. Well, not only that, guess what we had? I had a VHS player.
Oh, wow.
Back in the 70s. And this thing was like this big, front loaded, push it down, and the remote had a wire connected to it because it wasn't even a wireless remote.
I remember before we had cable, we had NBC, CBS, ABC, and Fox.
That's it.
That was it.
And here we had those, because I live in New York, plus Channel 9, Channel 11, Channel 13.
Yeah, we also had WAB channel 43 Cleveland. That was the other one we had.
That's all you got.
WAB channel Cleveland.
So back to what you were saying.
You remember when you used to have to go to the one channel that just showed all of the, what was the name of that channel? The one that just used to show what the movies and the shows were. Like at 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock.
Oh no, we didn't have that. I had TV Guide.
I think that was I think more privilege.
I think God, what was the most, so before magazines, what was the most popular magazine in the entire world?
No.
TV Guide. I can't believe you didn't think of that. That was the most popular. The most popular magazine. It was that and Reader's Digest.
The channel cable guide. That was really good.
Yeah.
Anyway,
channel. That was it. Channel cable guide. Yeah, that's what it was.
But like, anyways, point is that the game grabbed people's imaginations. But I don't know how to tell you this, but like 5th edition D&D fundamentally isn't really that different from original Dungeons and Dragons or the infamous BX Redbox starter set from the 1980s. It's pretty much the same game. It really is.
Alex Sludge, by the way, the news and review, Magic Garden, HR Puff and Stuff, Boogaloos. So Magic Garden, by the way, which was filmed here at Channel 11 in New York. And when my kids were young, we would watch the Magic Garden all the time. It really holds up. It's excellent. And they came to do a live concert here. So we brought our kids to go see the Magic Garden. And in the Magic Garden, it's 2 women who sing songs with puppets. And they were in their 20s. And then we go there, and they're like in their 70s. And my kids are like, who are the old ladies? we're like, oh, I'm so old. But yeah. Anyhow, they're still around. They still do live shows. I was actually on Wonderama. How about that? And are you ready? I did the snake cans. That's right. I did the freaking snake cans on Wonderama, and I got a snake. I did not get the flowers. That is my claim to fame.
I don't even know what that means.
Well, anyone out there, shout out if you know what the hell I'm talking about.
All right.
But
anyways, but
it
anyway,
used to be, but D&D, like, so this would be it. There was like maybe 50 stories like that were like in the news per week, and that was it. Like, it wasn't like today where there's like 50 stories a second, it was like back then it was like 50 stories and that's it. And D&D was one of those stories for years. Like, it was always, it was like the zeitgeist. It was everywhere.
Yeah, and I mean, and obviously it had such a powerful impact, right? That people were like afraid of it. They were thinking that it was taking over the minds of an entire generation of children.
Yeah, but mazes and monsters, baby.
But I also think that there's something to be said. I think that people like us are part of the problem as well, because at that time, I mean, D&D was predominantly played by teenagers and maybe people in college and stuff like that. You didn't have, maybe except for your old, the people up in Lake Geneva, you didn't have a lot of 40 and 50-year-olds playing D&D. No. Now you do, because we grew up playing D&D.
Right.
And
but the video games were the same thing, because remember in the 90s, the panic in the 90s, like, kids are playing video games, and this was back when I was doing like Gaming Stephen. I was really into the gamings, and I was basically doing what I did with the OGL, only with video games back then, and I was fighting the same fight, which is like, the average video game player is 31, so don't give me this crap that it's kids. Like, it's always, you know what I always call that? I call that, it's like, think of the children. Think of the children defense is what they call that. It's always like, think of the children. Think of the children. I'm like, oh God, it's always the children.
Vorpal bite. Hold on a sec.
By the way, I got more bookshelves, so my thing is going to expand all the way across.
Vorpal bite. Show me on the box where D&D 5th edition hurt you, because you seem very personally offended at 5th edition D&D. So why don't you just point out for me where the dragon hurt you, and we can try to take care of it. It's a game, man. It's a game. It really doesn't. Honestly, it really doesn't matter. It matters so little. It's great. We love it. We talk about it. Some people build careers off of it. It's a game, man. It really isn't that big of a deal. Play 1st edition. If you hate 5th edition so much, go play 2nd edition.
It's something that you're supposed to enjoy.
If your favorite edition of the game has already been released, congratulations, you won, right? Go play that game. So, I mean, the whole point of creating new editions is, in theory, to make money, but really what it is because the other 5 editions of the game didn't do it for you yet. And then you find that version of the game and you go, oh, I really like that version of the game. I'm going to play that one and I'm going to stick with that one. Anything else is just FOMO and cult of the new, and just get over yourself.
Well, my point of what was going on with Fallout is that it's fascinating to see, because so they were completely, it was 2 things that happened. One, all these other brands that thought this was going to happen to them. Like D&D and Halo. They're like, that's what we wanted to happen. We wanted our product to come out, and people went out in droves and bought it to the point that it's freaking crashing our servers, that we sold out. In fact, remember what happened with OGL? Remember Paizo? They ran out of, they just printed.
They sold out of printing,
they just printed their 4th version of Pathfinder. And Eric Mona is texting me. I have the texts. When I see you, I can even show it. He's like, within like a few days after OGL, he's like, Steve, we sold out, but that's okay. We sold out worldwide, but we still have the stuff in our warehouse. And then a few days later, he's like, we sold out of the warehouse. I'm like, it's like, we sold out of everything. In 2 weeks, we sold out of an inventory that was supposed to last us for a year. And we have to do an emergency reprint. And this is what he did. He called up the printer and said, how much paper do you have in stock? Because they got to order it. It takes a while to come in. And they said, we have this much paper. And they said that's how many books we want. Whatever paper you have, print up those books. So that's what they wanted to happen to D&D. And this thing with Halo is now everyone is looking at their properties, and it's going to start all over again. It's going to freaking start again. I guarantee. I wouldn't even be surprised they're having meetings right now, and they're going, okay, how do we do that? Because they're supposed to come out with the D&D television show on Paramount. Like, how do we come out with our D&D TV show and make it like Fallout? Everyone's watching this Fallout show, and they're taking notes, and they're like, what do we do? How do we make it?
See, that's the problem. You know, everyone's just trying to copy the success of something else. It doesn't work that way.
Oh, yeah, by the way, the Fallout RPG sold out worldwide.
Right. And you know what? It's a bunch of people who went out and bought 2D20. And you know what? They're probably going to be disappointed. Not because 2D20 isn't great. It's good. But because it's not D&D. They're like, oh, it's got D20 on it. It's got to be the same thing. No, it is not.
Yeah, they're just buying it. They'll put it in the shop.
But like that's where like the sort of, you know, it feels like you're chasing the puck, you know, like just trying to like be like, oh, let's just throw together something that's good as Fallout, and then our IP will sell a ton. Okay, why don't you just go make a good show and let it be on its own thing? And if it works out for you, great. I hate that so much.
Well, it's insanely hard. Like, you know, it's funny because people are haters of Fallout. People are like, oh, the acting's terrible. This is bad. It doesn't follow the lore. You know what? No one cares. You know why? Because it doesn't follow the lore. Well, guess what? 5 million people just bought the game. And now they'll, you know, like, they didn't know what the lore was. They didn't know any of this stuff, okay? I watched the show with 3 other people who never even heard of Fallout until I showed it to them.
Right. Yeah, I agree, Zolgathor. You know, they need passionate people who like and respect the source material and maintains its values and spirit. The problem is that when those values do not align with corporate earnings, something's got to give. You know?
Yeah, and
that's
also,
the problem.
The thing is, does it have to? I don't know. I'm before Star Wars became what it is now, when there was only the first 3 movies out. I was like the biggest Star Wars fan in the world, and I knew the Star Wars lore to levels of
embarrassment.
It was sad. It was sad. Even I'll admit it was sad. Like I knew levels of Star Wars lore that no one should know. Okay, because I loved Star Wars. I loved it to levels that no human should love a movie or a universe that much. Strangely, I never really connected with the new stuff, and especially the really new stuff, which is now Star Wars is kind of dead in a way. But the point is that is it really dead? Is it dead to me? And the answer is no, because I just ignore it. Okay, I don't need to look at the new stuff. It's like, oh, Palpatine came back, and they managed to put together a fleet of Star Destroyers in 10 seconds. I'm like, yeah, I ignore those movies. I'm like, I don't need to know what those movies are.
I reject your reality, and I substitute my own.
Yeah, you know what? I found out what movie that's from. That's it's from. Oh, it's like this B. It's not even a B movie. It's like a Z movie that I just saw where that quote came from.
I only know it from Adam Savage.
Adam Savage, who who says that, but it's actually from another movie. I think it's called like The Necromancer or something. But anyhow, the point is that who cares, man? Okay, like, you know what? You just accept the lore. Like, you can have different lore in the TV show, or you can just have, you know.
Well, and this is why. Okay.
Oh, by the way, Andor, the best thing that happened to Star Wars since 1980. Andor is in my top 5, and I will go through in detail why, if you ever want. One of the greatest pieces of television ever written, period. In terms of acting, story structure, I can go into it. I can get into that. Andor is 12 out of 10. It's not even 10 out of 10. It's not even 11. It's 12 out of 10. It's that good. It is freaking genius. I'm actually a little worried about season 2, but I think they'll pull it off because they're actually using the same story structure, where it's a 3-act structure over 4 parts, and they're doing it over time, and so it's taking place over periods of time. I digress. What were you going to say?
I honestly don't remember. Oh, this is one of the reasons why I know it's an unpopular opinion, but even before the OGL scandal happened and people were talking about Pathfinder 2, I was like advocating that. I was like, I understand it's not going to be, there was always like, oh, what's going to be the next announcement? Oh, it's going to be Starfinder 2, right? Like people were always hyping about that. And I would always be like, I hope it's Pathfinder 3. And everyone would be like, no. And I was like, I would be so hyped if they created a Pathfinder 3 or a D&D 6. You know why? And by the way, when you create that new edition, go in, create a new edition of the game. You don't literally have to throw out all of the babies with the bathwater, but really feel free, explore the space. Because I already own Pathfinder 1st edition. Right. I already own Pathfinder 2nd edition. And I already own D&D 5th edition. And if I wanted to play those games, I would play those games. I have those games. I own those games. I want something new. I want something better. I want something different. And not just asking me to buy basically the same game again, but maybe with like slightly better, typesetting.
Oh, by the way, yes, the movie is The Dungeon Master, is where he says, I substitute reality and substitute my own. Yeah, I'll keep going.
And so for me, I look forward to new editions, especially when they shake things up.
Oh, so do I. I'm very, like, people think, oh, Steve, I'm like down on everything. I really can't wait. Not that even that I'm going to play it. I really want to read the next version of D&D. I can't wait. I actually watching all the videos. I'm hooked. I really, I also write these, so I got to know what's going on. Yeah, that's part of my business model. But even from a personal point of view, I hope it's really good. I would love to play it, again. I play D&D once in a while. Pathfinder is my game of choice.
Right.
But
I mean, Zolgathor makes a point. He's like, they only want additional, they're only upset because they want additional official content for the system that they are currently playing. Okay. I mean, and I say this, with all due respect to people who sell game books, like, do you really need all of these game books? Like, you find the ones that you like. Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah. You're like, yes.
Do you? I'm like, if you saw my desk, that's why I bought more bookshelves. My entire office is filled with, I have books on top of books.
But realistically speaking, okay?
I have books on the floor. I have books everywhere.
Including all of these systems over here, like, and all these different things. Like, what percentage of this do you think I've used? The answer is very small.
None of it. Almost none of it. But you get enjoyment from it, right?
I do, but let me put something. I almost enjoy when an edition ends, because then I can bookend it and I can say, that's it. This is the edition, right? It's done. It's complete. It's like a lesson back when I did watch TV and then I was getting turned off by TV.
How often do you go back to your old books?
I'm not all the time. I probably read old books. Yeah, I read old books more than I read new books, probably.
Oh, that's a sign of you getting old, by the way.
Well, sure. But I mean, don't get me wrong, I read a lot of new stuff too. But what I'm saying is that, like, for me, it's far more. I like the the completeness of an edition. It's like with TV shows, when I was still watching them and I was getting mad with them, I was like, I'm not watching a new show anymore until it's done. Until they have been like, yep, we did 5 seasons. It never jumped the shark. It stuck the landing. the show is over. Now I can go watch it because I was watching too many shows that I was getting invested into that either ended prematurely because of some stupid contract dispute or something, or they shit the bed and they Games of Thrones it and just ruined everything about the show, but the ending.
Well, Games of Thrones, I won't get into that. But there's actually one I'd say that's worse than Game of Thrones, which is interesting because they're redoing it, is Heroes. Did you ever watch Heroes?
Absolutely. It's one of the top shows that I was talking about.
Heroes?
Season one. Season one was great.
It was great until it wasn't, because at the end, they freaking kept the bad guy. I'm ruining it, by the way, if you haven't seen it. It's like 15 years old. It's like they set it up. The bad guy should have died. And they're like, but he's become kind of he's become kind of a breakout star. They rewrote and they basically ran out of plot after the first season. Like, it was so good, and then they're like, now what? And they're like,
well, the problem was it's like the Lost problem, right? Like when Damon Lindelof and
they are remaking
Lost,
Heroes. Yeah, they're redoing it.
It was pitched as like, by the way, this is also a problem with D&D. Is Lost was like originally pitched as like this 3-season show, right? And like we're gonna tell a beginning, a middle, and an end, right?
Yep.
And then after the first season, ABC goes, it's a smash hit.
Oh yeah,
we need 6 seasons.
Yep.
And then you're like, shit, we only had story for like 2 seasons more, maybe. And we said, and then it's like, okay, well, guess it's time to put in a bunch of filler, and it's time to pad it out and just make up additional stories that don't really. And I feel like a lot of times that happens to people in D&D campaigns, because they're like, playing D&D, it has to be 1 to 20. Like that's what the game starts with, that's what the game ends with, and it's like,
I don't know about that, but
no, people are getting away from it now more. But like, I think it's fine to just say, hey, our D&D our adventure is for levels 3 to 5, 6, and it'll take you a month or 2 to finish it, or 3 months, and then you're done. And that's it. By the way, that's it. That's the end of the story. There's no massive arc. There's no 5-year campaign arc on Critical Role. You're not going to have this. Nope. We are just telling a brief, fun story. It's going to take up 3 to 6 months of you and your player's time, and then that's it. Your character's done. You're not going to get to put your build all the way up to level 20 with your +5 Vorpal sword. Just short for the point.
Well, Full Metal Jacket is talking first. I actually saw a talk. It was a New York Times talk with Lindelof, and they were talking. It was when the last season of Lost was on. Oh my God, it was such a good talk. Yes, they had the last scene written, but it did not have an ending. That show went on way too long. And one of my friends, Harvey Grillo Markowitz, was one of the writers on Lost, and he left because it started to do exactly what you just described, is that it was going all over the place. And he felt like, and he left the show because it was going to turn into one of those. Wheel of Time, it's funny you mentioned Wheel of Time, because Wheel of Time was supposed to be a 3-book trilogy, and the first book sold a couple million copies, and then he's like, I guess it's going to be a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then he died. He literally wrote the book until he died, and you can read it, and if you read it, you can see, because the characters completely start changing by the 3rd book and the 4th book. They're just going in weird directions, because they were not supposed to do that. It was not supposed to be what it ended up being, which was like a 13-book series that ended up going in 1,000 directions, that they needed Brandon Sanderson to freaking bring it in to fix it all, because he freaking died writing that series. But that's something else. It's like, how many of these series, it's D&D. Someone said D&D is turning into this too much of a good thing, and it's stretching. And I feel like, it's that Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. So I'm very curious to see. It's like, you're 100% right. They should have just said, screw it, let's fix the game, make it 6th edition, and just go and make all the changes we want, and hopefully everyone will follow us. but they can't because it's so damn popular. So they're like, ugh, and they're so stuck. They're like, I really want to see how they handle it, because it's like, okay, it's 5th edition, but it's 5th edition remastered, so all your old stuff works with it, but yet we're putting in new stuff, and it's not OGL, but it is OGL. I'm like, oh my god, what a mess! It's just such a mess. Maybe that's why she left. Maybe Cynthia Williams just saw the writing on the wall and it's like, oh boy, this is going to be such a mess to deal with.
Yeah. I mean, the best I could say, and I do, we have to wrap up because I have a stream. I'm doing my live stream. We're going to
right into yours. We're just going to switch the channel.
But I do need to eat.
No, I got to go eat too. I'm starving.
Before I pass out. But yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about our patrons voted, and a patron submitted a topic at one, which is we're going to be talking about how do you handle players of different or disparate skill level, interest level. If you have some players who are really into the game and some players who aren't really in the game, some players who are really good at the game, some players who are not so good at the game. How do you handle that, and what are some strategies and tactics? So
which
should be
games?
An interesting time. I mean, role-playing games.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like
presumably.
Golf.
No.
Or we have handicaps.
Right. That's true. And that's a great question. Should D&D have handicaps?
Oh, we do handicap. My better players give their characters, they play broken characters to challenge themselves. And I would never, ever, ever recommend that for anyone starting off. I would give them actually quite well built characters. I would never give a character that's like one.
I actually think that's really good advice, and part of what I would probably advise as well. It's like if you have a character who's like really, if you have a player who's like really, really good and they're really whatever, don't let them play the rogue or the fighter or one of these other really top tier classes from Pathfinder 2.
No. These guys. They take
be a witch, be an oracle.
Well, it's not even that. They actually make their characters the free ancestry. Nah, they don't want free ancestry. And
Sure.
They all took what's it called? The detriments, where you put a -2.
The flaws.
The flaws. They took flaws, and they didn't get anything for them. They just took it.
To be fair, you were ahead of the curve because now you don't get anything for taking flaws. You just get the flaw.
Oh, well, that's what they did. They took flaws, and that's half my characters. They took flaws just to take it. And then we played a game where this guy, this was a little broken. It did mess up the math. Is that this was Pathfinder First Edition? It wasn't too bad in First Edition because there's a lot of ways to make up. You can't do this in Second Edition. Is that he was using the same weapon from level 1 to 20, and he never changed it.
Nice.
And he never put any pluses on it. But
Mad respect.
Well, the funny thing is, here's the funny thing. In my game here, these guys are level 13, and there's actually a progression. So there's you're supposed to have at level 2, you're supposed to have a +1 weapon, and at each level you're supposed to. There's specific times where you get a +1 to a stat, +1 to a weapon, +1 to armor, +1 to a skill. And there's specific levels where this happened. They were at the level progression at level 13. They were at level 8 for their level progression. And I told them, I'm like, guys, you got to get, because they're complaining. They're endlessly complaining. We're doing so poorly in combat, and the math is tight in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So if you're 5 levels behind the math, they're really not doing that well.
Oh, that would not work in Pathfinder 2nd Edition.
Well, guess what? They found out the hard way that they were really having a hard time. And I told them, guys, just freaking spend, because they kept saving their money. And I'm like, just fucking spend your money, okay? Just spend it. Just get the +2, get this, get the +2 to your stat. They got the +2 armor, +2 weapons, and +2 to their saves. The next combat they walked in, it was before they were using a pea shooter, and they come in with a fucking bazooka, and they're like, oh, let me roll the dice. They're all dead. They're like, what the hell just happened? I'm like, and that's why you gotta keep your character leveled up. Because I'm like, you guys were handicapping yourself so poorly, and they couldn't believe it. They're literally swinging their sword and doing before they do 20 points of damage, they're swinging the sword doing 50 points of damage. They're like, what just happened? Why are we doing so much better? Why are we not dying anymore? I was like, because you guys really have to stay ahead of the curve. The point is that I don't mind them being a little bit behind, but they were really falling behind, to the point that it was actually not even making their game fun. You know what I mean? But I would almost handicap them by saying, okay, the new characters are playing level 2. You guys that are experts, you play level 1. You could deal with it, you know. And then level 2, especially in Pathfinder, they'll be doing especially if they're fighting level 1 monsters, they'll be really doing well. And then they'll feel like it's a fun game, and they'll have a little bit more power. I'm doing a show for you. We're doing your show. We're doing it now.
Well, no, I gotta go.
Is this the Agents of Edgewatch group? Yes, it is the Agents of Edgewatch group. And if you listen to the podcast, that did happen. All right, well, check out. I don't know if we answered any questions here, but it was a fun discussion.
Yeah, we were all over, but that's okay. It was a bonus episode anyway. So yeah, check out Night's Last Call. I'll be back in about 45 minutes if you want to keep some fun conversation going about
check
this.
out
and
Secret
then
Dragons,
check out
because it ends in a week. Less than a week.
Kickstarter.rollforcombat.com so that so you can get your the cool bonuses for reaching certain tier goals. And of course, you know, nobody does it better in the biz than Stephen and Mark. So at least in my personal opinion.
We put the extra every dollar we spend, we put into our books.
Right. I'd like to think that if I had a publishing company, I would run it as poorly as they would, which is to say I would invest too much money in art and layout and in paying people appropriately and getting good product.
Do I really run it that poorly?
No, but I mean, you don't cut corners, you know, you spare no expense.
Well, it's because it's exactly what I said is that it's a deluxe product. So I make sure that it has, like, when you get it, it's like you should open it up and it should explode in your face of art and color and beauty. And people should be like, oh my God, you know, and they feel like they're going to spend $60-$70 for a book.
Right.
Get what
it should
they pay
wow.
for. Yeah, it should wow them. And they'll be like, damn.
Yeah, awesome.
All right.
Well,
have
thank
fun
you, Stephen.
In your thing, and
oh yes, I'm gonna go get some food, and then I'm gonna be right back talking more RPGs because that's what I love to. Actually, it's good because Friday night is our RPG night, and we played at my buddy Smith's house, and he canceled this week, so that means the group is canceled, and so I'm not even gonna get to play RPGs this week. So yeah. Shame. Although on Saturday I do get the knife twist of we've got our truck rental to take the final big pieces of the studio out and put them into fucking self-storage. So that'll be very cheerful.
Dun, 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 dun,
yes,
dun,
exactly.
Dun, dun.
Correct.
So
Imperial March.
You're gonna be playing Little Death March when that happens. A little sad. Like, oh,
I do know the power of the dark side. All right. Thank you, Stephen.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
See ya.